Well, you're all very welcome to another episode of the Business of E-commerce. I'm delighted, as always, to have John Leach of WSI as our expert panelist. John, how are you today?
Morning, Brandon. Yeah, we're pretty good. Of course, getting to the stage where we can begin to talk about Christmas, even outside the professional. I know we started working on the campaigns earlier in the year, but yeah, I think we're heading into peak season for everybody.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk of Christmas in my house anyway, I can tell you that. We've got a great panel again today, John. We seem to be striking gold all the time with the type of people we have on, and today's no different. We've got David Gordon, head of e-commerce at Cloudtech. We've got Aisling Quinn, founder and CEO of Moshoppa. We've got Paul Carey, who's the SEO consultant at Launch Site Boost. And we've got Shane Stafford, senior marketing leader at Clarity Engagement Solutions. So we'll be chatting to you each, and they'll all give us a flavor really of life at the coal face of e-commerce. But as always, John, we start with a general discussion about a different topic nearly every week. And today we want to talk about the challenge of scaling e-commerce or your e-commerce or digital business and still not losing touch with the customer. Can you talk us through that today?
Yeah, well, I mean, as we started at the outset, we're moving into, we're in peak season, if you like, at the moment. And we've all seen the communications, the promotions, the emails, the messaging ramp up. And it sort of happens these days without maybe the hysteria that we had around Black Friday and Cyber Monday like 4 or 5 years ago, when this was a whole new concept. And obviously shopping for Christmas or the holidays gets earlier and earlier every year, it feels like. But if you're scaling or if you're trying to grow your revenue, well, to me, that generally means you either need new customers or better customers. And let me explain that. I mean, new customers is obviously in the e-com business is all about generating, new and more and better quality traffic. And we discussed that a lot over the weeks with different owners and what they're doing. But I still believe that organic search engine traffic is a sort of foundational program which builds success. It's a foundational program. So I think we'll talk a little bit about how do you get yourself positioned to take advantage of when people are naturally doing more searches for products and wherever you're offering that, how you're making sure that you're visible and you're there and how you approach that over the longer term. But better customers, to me, means customers that obviously buy more. So that's either larger basket sizes or indeed more frequent purchases. And that means, generally speaking, that you have to, like various things to approaches to that, but it means very often you have to improve and increase the range of your offerings. And, getting access to that new stock, those new ranges, maybe without all of the headaches of having to take them on and taking them into your location, your warehouse, your environment, etc. So that's going to be an interesting topic, I think, to tease out this morning. And then once all of this is working well and you're sort of seeing the growth that you hope for, and we've had some explosive growth for some online businesses over the last year or 18 months, then we've talked to a lot of people about they started off, using manual processes, things that hung together fine when they were sort of a small business and growing. But as you grow and scale, then you need to start thinking about streamlining those, automating those processes. And of course, we've had the added complexity for some people this year of, having to keep staff groups separated to avoid COVID issues, or lots more staff working from home and working remotely. And how do you keep the whole engine running smoothly when you're dealing with that? But there's always a but. And we talked many times to owners on this podcast about what makes their store different, what makes their store successful. And increasingly, that's about, having a strong connection with your customer based on your vision, your mission, what you're trying to do, and something that makes you different from the larger faceless or even soulless brands. Like how do you compete with a Goliath like Amazon or whatever? They're always going to probably win on range and maybe even price, although customs and all that sort of stuff is making life a little more interesting. But for successful e-com businesses, it's about having that authentic connection with their customer base and really standing out from that mind. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, because I really believe as e-commerce leaders, we are in the content and education business, whether we like it or not. And that's the best way to earn the right to sell. And surely it's the best way to really long-term, valuable relationship with those customers. So, before we get completely carried away with expansion and growth, because that's always good, we need to check ourselves, just make sure that we're retaining that authentic customer connection that made us successful in the first place. And if we lose touch with that, can be a problem down the road. So I think that's the themes that we're going to explore this morning, Brendan, with our panel, and looking forward to the discussion.
Brilliant. Okay, let me turn first to Aisling Quinn. I love the name, Moshoppa. Now, I love the name because John knows I'm a Gaeilgeoir anyway. So Moshoppa, I'd say it as Moshoppa. But how do you say it yourself, Aisling?
Yeah, so we call it Moshoppa, but I'm a Gaeilgeoir as well. I went to an all-Irish secondary school, having lived in England for the best part of my youth. So yeah, that's where it came from. We were going into e-business. We wanted to get shop in there, and of course, Gaeilge came in handy. Yeah,
brilliant. So tell us first of all about Moshoppa or Moshoppa for people who are not Gaeilgeoirs, and tell us about the type of work you do and the type of clientele you have, and how you help them in those ways.
Of course, yeah. So Moshoppa, we're effectively a startup. We're kind of slowly crawling our way out. So looking forward to learning more about how to overcome the pains of scaling on this meeting today. But so what we do, we create online stores for grassroots clubs. And what our technology does is we've built a platform that allows these stores or allows these clubs to have access to over 140,000 brands, their current stock. And so what we're trying to do is build on belonging. So at Moshoppa, we believe that the human need to belong as well as to consume is going to power the next wave of e-commerce. So if you're going to buy something, buy it for your club. So buy the exact same product you're already buying online, do it on your club's online store, and they will avail of the affiliate commissions that are currently going to influencers or the social media stars of today. So that's really what we're about. We're about building on belonging. So say, I don't know, take a look, your local club, they have currently maybe 200 members. What we're saying to those members is buy everything you're currently buying online for your club through your club's online store. Our technology links in, so all through APIs, we link into the back end of every website. So it's Nike, Apple, whoever. We pull in all of their current stock, all of the product details, everything from sizes to colors to pricing, descriptions, reviews, you name it. We pull it in. So you're getting the same experience, but it's far more curated. It's far more, I guess, tangible or sticky in that you're going to be buying for a reason. And so that's something, you speak about authentic connections. We feel, it all starts with your club generally, certainly as if you're part of your community. And so that's really what we do at Moshoppa. It's bringing that out.
I'm loving this idea. Do you like that, John?
Yeah.
So, in other words, this is open, Aisling, to soccer clubs, GAA clubs, all sporting clubs. Is that right? So that really they get a commission out of the stuff that they need anyway. Is that the idea behind it?
It is. It's that and sustainable fundraising. So, I'm a mother and I'm buying my Lululemon leggings online anyway. If I do it through my club site or my children's club site, I know that about 20% of that sale is going to go back to that club. Mm-hmm. So we're all shopping online so often. And I think particularly coming out of COVID, I think there's that we want to shop local, or we want to do something for our local community and really help build that back up. So that's what it's all about. It's not just the stuff for the clubs themselves, but it's every member, whatever they're buying online. If it's their holidays, if they're flying, if they've got a Ryanair flight, book it through your club's site. And now it won't be 20% for a flight, but whatever is available, we avail.
Not with Ryanair's reputation.
No, probably not.
So in terms of pricing, then, I guess, very familiar with, obviously, we've lots of affiliate partners. Most large e-commerce stores will run an affiliate program. There'll be a range of commissions, etc. So you're still getting, I guess, whatever the available best price is on that store. It's just there's a commission payment in the back end going back to the club. Is that?
Absolutely. And so you buy everything on your club site. So we just pull in all from various different websites. We would pull it all into one place. It would sit on the club store. And then whatever that price is, it's the exact same as if you were buying it from the from the Nike or whoever.
Right.
And Nike will actually deliver. So what our tech does is we would automatically send them the payment, send them all the delivery information, and they fulfill the order. So effectively, Moshoppa doesn't have to handle any logistics. We just pass it all through our AI tech.
So so Nike's still sort of the merchant of record then, is it, in terms of the transaction? You're just passing details to them. Okay.
Yeah.
Which removes a lot of the complexities and
pain
and payments, etc., from the store, which is really neat.
And do you have many affiliate clubs now at the moment, Aisling?
So in terms of our affiliate brands, we have 140,000 signed up through various affiliate agencies, and that would be globally, particularly in the US, South America. We actually launched, so in addition to doing it for small clubs, which is really where our heart is at, we can also plug into apps. So we actually launched with Ronaldinho this week. So he's now got a store. He's launched an app, and we're the e-commerce store on that. So, so he's particularly big in South America. He's 140 million followers. So, in terms of clubs, we're really working from the top down. So, going into a national association and saying, okay, you've got 1,000 clubs. We're gonna, give us access to them, and obviously, it helps them achieve their goals in terms of getting closer to because it's funny, you talk about getting closer to your customer. That's what they're trying to do. They want to know more about who are these people that are supporting their community all the way through. So particularly in the US, a lot of the states, I mean, the American soccer scene is incredible, particularly women's soccer over there. It's, every young girl is playing it. It's quite different. I know Ireland, it's on the up, but it's huge over there. So the US is really our focus, as well as Europe at the minute.
Okay, great. Brilliant. Let me turn now to David Gordon. You're with Cloudtech, David. Can you tell us a little bit about Cloudtech and your journey over the last year and a half or so?
Certainly. Thank you, Brendan. So I'm a channel partner manager for a US multinational called ServiceSource that essentially provides outsourced sales and channel management solutions to the big tech companies like Microsoft or Google or many others. So I, in my current role, managing a portfolio of ISV tech partners of Google's, most of whom are either e-commerce or retail partners. So job involves really doing the go-to-market strategy for those partners, and that can encompass a wide variety of different activities, from organizing press releases, doing webinars, other kinds of marketing activities. In the good old days before the pandemic, I was involved in organizing events in different offices around Europe, and I want to come back on to that point in just a minute. But the real challenge for me and for my colleagues over the past 18 months has been just adjusting to the new world in which we find ourselves. Mm-hmm. I think Aisling spoke very strongly about really capturing that sense of belonging rather than just being consumers. So belonging to local clubs and belonging to the community. And John spoke earlier on about maintaining that sense of authenticity. I think that has been a very formidable challenge for many organizations over the past 18 months. There are many, many benefits to working remotely. There's so much I can say on this, but everything from just having greater flexibility in terms of managing your day-to-day, greater flexibility with regard to managing childcare and all of that. But the flip side of the coin is that it becomes more difficult for many e-commerce companies to maintain that close customer relationship. The beauty about face-to-face events is that you get to meet your customers, obviously face-to-face, and interact with them directly. For the past 18 months, we have not been able to do that. We've had to resort to having calls. And yes, in some ways, it's much more efficient to have Zoom calls with customers or partners, but it also keeps this distance that we don't normally have under normal circumstances. So I think that has become a very real challenge. So it is great that the pandemic has driven so many people online. Speaking for myself, before the pandemic, I wouldn't have bought things like shoes or clothes or sunglasses online. Now I have. So that has been hugely positive. It's brought a huge amount of people online. That it's really kind of raised awareness of the market potential that is out there. but it becomes a bigger challenge for companies to maintain that close customer relationship. So there are no easy answers here, and we'll need to figure out a more effective way to do that. But I do see huge potential for many e-commerce companies with regard to how things have gone. Streamlining processes, automation has made things much more efficient. But one point I'd like to emphasize is that communication has always been a very, very formidable challenge for many companies, and not just within e-commerce. And I think in the current climate, it becomes an even bigger challenge. If we're all in the office, if we're all out meeting customers directly, communication is not as challenging as is when we're all working remotely. So having those one-to-one calls with staff, with colleagues, with customers, I think it really works miracles in terms of building relationships, building better trust, and ultimately driving more sales.
I think, David, it's an interesting sort of thing that we've learned over the last 18 months in many respects, is that like Zoom, all the electronic communication channels we have are absolutely fabulous, but they're slightly second class, you know, compared to meeting somebody face to face and to the point you're making. And I suppose we have lots of connections, I would suggest now, maybe less communication. And that's the challenge for companies. And how do they make that communication work? Like if I get on a chat session or an email, or I'm talking to my shopping provider whoever I'm dealing with, I expect them to know everything about me, you know, that they should know. Like I'm standing in front of an assistant in a shop that I've been going into for years. And I guess connecting up those sources and making sense of it is a real challenge for people, we found.
Yeah, I mean, I would totally agree. One recent example that comes to mind is I purchased something from Amazon some time ago, and I had to get it replaced. And so I went on the chat function, and it was absolutely brilliant. The agent was super efficient, and my device, so he diagnosed the problem, it was a mechanical fault, and then my device was replaced literally within 1 week. That is terrific service. However, one of the criticisms that many consumers have is that the big tech organizations like Amazon and others are essentially faceless. So you have this chat function that will resolve your query or whatever it might be, and service typically tends to be very good, but it can be quite sort of
it's transactional. It's transactional.
Yeah, it's very transactional. It's very impersonal. It doesn't sort of feel real. And the challenge that the bigger corporations will face, I think, is to try and personalize it and make it a little bit sort of friendlier. So yes, efficiency is superb, and yes, that promptness of service is to be applauded. But I think that sort of human touch is lacking sometimes, and that's something.
In some respects, that's a result of our management systems. You know, having run service teams and call center operations, they're the metrics we measure. It's how many calls, you know, how many been successful, and what you measure is what you get. So you know, sometimes that's maybe the result of having management systems that focus on that rather than that personal engagement, which is almost impossible to measure. I don't know how to do it. So
I would agree with that, John. I think certainly there's a lot to be said for measuring metrics. I mean, the old adage is if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So there's a lot to be said for analyzing metrics. There's a lot to be said for looking at the numbers. But at the same time, you have to look at other variables that are not necessarily directly measurable, like how staff are communicating, how they're interacting, those kind of things. It's not easy to measure those things, but those factors must be taken into account, particularly when it comes to delivering better service to consumers. So yeah, these are hurdles that we all will need to address in the coming years. I mean, I wrote an article in the Irish Times a couple of years back in 2018. I talked about like remote working, and one of the challenges I said that companies will need to deal with is maintain that sort of cohesive team atmosphere. once people start working remotely, it's not quite the same vibe. And I think that relates then into how we relate to consumers through whatever channel that might happen to be. So yes, challenges are there. But I do believe that we can overcome those challenges if we work together. I think to the point you made earlier on about the sort of management system, many of the larger organizations essentially work within a matrix environment. So you've got like sales teams, marketing teams, and customer service teams, and coordinating all those together is not easy at the best of times. So that's something we need to do with. Yeah.
Brendan, you're on mute.
Apologies, I was on mute there. I'm going to move on to Paul Carey for now. Paul, you're the SEO consultant at Launch Site Boost. Can you tell us a little bit about that and your own take on the last year or so?
Yeah, of course. So we are basically an SEO agency who help businesses essentially drive a lot more organic traffic, essentially help them be found by a lot more people in the likes of Google searches so that they can increase their organic revenue. Now, over the last 18 months, e-commerce specifically has been incredibly interesting, not just for the businesses, but also for the consumers, because from the consumer point of view, and a perfect example, so thanks David for actually teaming me up to this, is because people who didn't previously buy online, whether it be clothes or shoes or whatever it may be, they now have done. So businesses are also seeing a lot more newer customers as well. And now, and to go on to the point that John had mentioned earlier about how do we kind of keep customers or get better customers, there is a lot to be said also with a balance between what we've mentioned. So again, David was talking about chatting with someone on customer support with Amazon. Now, to try and bring more kind of a human interaction level to that, so that, you know, you have a bit more of a feeling of being looked after. As an example, now I haven't actually seen this myself, but I've seen the adverts that they've been running for this. Curry's, as an example, Curry's PC World are talking now about how their chat system is that they actually put you in touch with a person, I suppose you can say face to face, whoever it is over Zoom, although they're crossing that line into, it's not just what we believe in most cases is an automated chat function, which we can then eventually speak to a human if we want, which I personally believe most people kind of get frustrated and want to speak to a human immediately. I think they've kind of crossed that barrier into, well, we're here to help you immediately. Now, also in a case of kind of getting better clients as well, there's a lot of things that e-commerce brands, I think, have kind of been forced to innovate in the last 18 months as well, because they've seen such an influx of traffic to their website. Now, when people are searching, for example, something such as, let's say, men's black t-shirt, so if you were to go onto a particular clothing website and see a men's black t-shirt, previously to kind of March 2020, e-commerce stores who were in the kind of fashion industry, they would have kind of been in a case of, well, how many sales did we make this week on our black t-shirt, whatever it may be. And now that they're getting a lot more traffic, all of a sudden the conversation went to, well, what can we do to increase this and increase the AOV, the average order value? So now what some people are doing, and to be honest, I've only seen a very, very small percentage of clothing stores do this online, but something that's been quite interesting is this get the look particular button. Instead of just a buy now for your men's black t-shirt, obviously on most websites, we have a picture of not just a t-shirt, but it's usually a model wearing that t-shirt. So they have their t-shirt on, they've got their jeans, they've got their shoes. And in most cases, someone looks at that picture, and the reason for that model picture is so someone looks at it and goes, that's what I want to have that look. However, most e-commerce stores are usually just selling a small percentage of that look. So let's say the t-shirt was 50 euros. Now, all of a sudden, when you innovate and have, well, you can actually have the whole look. That 50 euro order has now increased to 150, 200. So your conversion rate optimization has not only increased, but your average order value has also increased. So we've seen a lot of incredible innovation as well in the last 18 months in regards to e-commerce.
Yeah. And I think, Paul, that's it, because it's one of the topics we've talked about a lot is the difficulty many retailers have had is translating what's a really good real world experience into the online. And I think that's what you're exactly describing. You know, okay, I've been involved in sales all my life, so I like to be sold to. You know, you walk into a shop and you're more frustrated if the person in the shop doesn't actually do a good job at selling. More times I've get in and said, look, relax, I'm going to buy this, but now you have to sell it to me. You know, that sort of environment, because that's to say, oh yeah, that shirt will go well with that tie or those trousers or this, and you end up walking out with 4 or 5 items. And I think that's exactly what you're describing is, how do we make that happen digitally, which is absolutely not easy. It's
not an easy thing to do either. And another thing as well, and look, I understand that this is different for depending on the size of the organization that you operate in. Another thing that I've seen specifically in the clothing industry from a few small percentage of companies is they've also started to not only have the images of particular models on their websites, but models of different sizes, so that you can choose what size you are and see someone who would be a similar build to you have that as well. Now, look, I know that's very, very difficult to do from a lot of different ways, but one of the ways that, or one of the things that we've mentioned earlier as well is about Amazon. And John, you had mentioned Amazon, that they may be able to offer more, you know, brands or pricing or whatever it may be. But one of the very interesting things that I don't think a lot of businesses understand is that the vast majority of Amazon sales or Amazon products is actually from third-party sellers. Now, what's interesting here is it still comes from Amazon because they use a system called Fulfilled by Amazon. So a lot of their stock is in Amazon's warehouse. Now, most buyers don't actually realize this. Most buyers think they're just buying from Amazon directly. Yeah. However, that's not the case. But because the vast majority of the listings we see on Amazon are actually third parties, if those third party listings aren't actually optimized, you actually do have a very, very strong chance when your own website is optimized correctly to give Google the things that they want to see. And not to go too nerdy here, but you know, your titles, descriptions, your heading tags, whatever it may be. When Google starts to get all these signals, you actually are pushed above Amazon. And even if someone now, and we know this from the statistics, that most people, when they search, for example, black t-shirt, they might click on Amazon, but they'll also have a look at the next person down or the next person. They'll have a look at a few different websites before they make their decision. So you also have the opportunity to find the right balance between optimizing your website so that Google will recommend you to someone on a search, but there's a balance between optimizing your website for what's written from a sales point of view as well. Now, the rule that we always give, because we don't see a lot of people follow this, is always write for humans first, because you're selling to a person. And it comes back to what we mentioned earlier, where you need to have that kind of personal touch with somebody as well, which is also why reviews are so important. Because if you can see reviews, and look, it's a whole kind of separate topic to talk about whether the reviews are real or not, but let's assume that they are real. To see the reviews from someone who's in a position as yourself, who's going through, let's call it a similar pain point, looking for this particular piece of clothing that can't find anywhere else, but you can then also see that someone else has bought from this company, they received it quickly, there was no issues, they didn't need to return, the sizing was the sizing that they said, because I know that's a whole other thing online as well, specifically with clothing. But again, try and put in as much as you can that shows the benefits to somebody, not the features, but the benefits. And again, I know a lot of e-commerce brands maybe don't like them, but have a look at Amazon for this, because Amazon, the way that they've laid out their products is you've got essentially 5 bullet points. And a bullet point will be a feature followed by a benefit. So, you know, as an example, it might be, you know, easy returns. So that's kind of your feature, but your benefit needs to be, if you do have any issues, you know that we can send it back to us and, you know, we'll cover posting or we'll get the next size out to you immediately, whatever it may be. But just give people as much kind of confidence in you and your business to deliver what you're promising to them. And that will also then push your conversion rate optimization high.
Great.
Great. So questions just slightly, but on that optimization question, like one of the challenges or one of the conversations we often have with clients is obviously when you start a search engine optimization program, it takes time to deliver. Like it's 6 months, 12 months, maybe even 18 months before you really get the benefit. How do you, and it always feels like a self-serving conversation from, you know, our side of the table, because you know, give us time, you know, don't worry about it, it'll all work in the future. How is your experience with getting through that question with clients? Because I think it's true, but it's trying to convince them that this is a long-term game. You have to focus on it over.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So I'll give you an example. I won't name any names, but a particular logistics company, we had a call with them about a month ago at this stage. And they were saying that they wanted to put together a kind of Christmas kind of end of Q4 rush period, because obviously a lot of people are looking to ship packages and have them on time and have them sent out to friends and family. And they said they wanted to create this Christmas page so that it would be optimized and rank highly for that. And I said, it's not really going to be a situation where you, even if you build that today, you're probably not going to rank for it this year. It's very, very low percentage. However, if you build that now, what you're doing is you're putting the building blocks in place so that you rank successfully for that in the future and all the future years. Now, again, also not naming names, but e-commerce brands that I've worked on in the past have particular Black Friday pages or Christmas pages that they've built previously that still continue to rank now. So it is a long-term play, but to what you're saying there, John, SEO is an investment. You're investing in what's going to be there in the future, because again, when you say that it might take 12 months, 18 months to rank, that is correct, depending on what the search is, how competitive that may be. But that search, so let's say you're trying to rank for the term Black Friday sales as an example. You won't be able to do it if you optimize today for this year, for 2021, but you will rank for 2022. And if that successfully is optimized, you also then more than likely will rank in 2023, 2024. So that search term and the time and resources you've put in pays dividends over time as well.
Yeah.
And keep those pages alive so they retain that equity. And
exactly. Yeah.
Very often they put them up this year, delete them, start again next year, just say, no, you're not going.
I would never delete the page. I want to be very, very clear about that. I would never delete the page.
But it happens. It happens.
It does.
So, listen, I don't know if you're aware of this, guys, but there will be both a video and an audio version of this particular podcast. So anybody who's listening to this on audio, they won't have the benefit of seeing what's behind Shane Stafford there. And I'm really looking for an explanation here, because Shane, you're the senior marketing leader at Clarity Engagement Solutions, but you've got to tell us about this fearsome skeletal character that's hovering behind you there before you start telling us about yourself.
Well, first off, thanks for inviting us onto the podcast. And this is Yorick. It was my impulse buy of the first lockdown. Always wanted a skeleton. Always wanted one for. I'm really into drawing for anatomy and things like that. And when I was locked in my room over the first lockdown, I went on to eBay and found your work.
So it's the first skeleton we've had on the podcast anyway, for sure. So, first I want to say is, like, I really enjoyed listening to everybody. It was like just viewing another discussion, and now I have to partake. So first I wanted to say, Paul, your jumper is amazing. Absolutely love it. And secondly, Aisling, your branding is brilliant on this. Like, it's a point out to anyone going on to Zoom or Teams or anything like that, where you can put your branding, try and put your branding, which is great. But to go into Clarity, so I'm marketing director at Clarity Engagement Solutions. So basically, we're a consultancy and training provider for life science, medical devices, and financial banking companies. So we go in and literally what you were talking about, like we go in and kind of make people that are selling products to customers try and relate it to their customers, so they mean more to their customers. So they're not just selling a product, they're selling something around what that customer is facing at the moment or whatever they're concerned with. Primarily in the pharma side, we have had, like, in the company's about 15 years old now, but we were a very on the ground type company. We would go in and do our consultants in their offices or do the training in their offices. So once March hit, that flipped to online, and we had to kind of adapt and transform all our practices to meet that. Now, we had our blogs, pieces and stuff for SEO engagement, and as you said, content is key. We had that in place, but we had to keep on adding to that. But not only do we have to add to that, we have to add it to our training. So we have to make our training digital. We have to make our workshops, our groups, all digital, much like this on Zoom, Teams. There's another couple. I think we were juggling about 5 different video platforms at the time. But
I suppose, long story short, we made that transition very quickly and very effectively, where we actually have, after growing our company over this time, because travel took up an awful lot of time of our, for our consultants. There'd be flights over to, we primarily deal in the US, Asia, and mainland Europe. So there was a lot of flights back and forth. So you could only fit in so many meetings into your calendar in a week. So we were able to open up that calendar and then obviously provide services. The downside is, everyone's kind of been discussing, is networking. It's essentially the bread and butter of how our company kind of worked. A lot of the people that work in our company come from those companies. So they had a network within those companies, and when those people would move, we would utilize that network and get into another company. We still do network, but it's very hard over Zoom or Teams to do that. Like, so we had to adapt, and we had to try and get leads through online. And I suppose the difference with B2B is the nature of, before we even get a sale agreed for our services, it usually takes about 6 months to kind of warm them up. As well as that, we have to be on that lucky number of when they're doing their budgets as well, and they can factor in that they need training or a consultancy service. So we have to kind of work that. So there's always that kind of life journey. So we had to kind of, well, I had to kind of manage expectations in what you can get from digital. Like, people aren't going to just go onto your site and go, yes, I want to avail of your service. There's a lot of nurturing. There's a lot of continuing to give them information.
Yeah, I mean, people still believe that, you know, build it and they will come.
Yeah.
Like throw up a website, throw a few products on, and then really come buy from it. You know?
The age old, what's my KPI?
I wish it was that easy.
I want more customers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a slow build. But in the last year, we're after finding that slow build and that nurturing is paying dividends now. We're getting a lot of customers in a usual. This time of the year used to be really slow for it, because everyone's kind of shutting down for, I don't know if you're familiar with pharma companies or anything, but they're they take the longest holidays known to man. and they kind of start shutting down towards November. You won't really get anything else, but it's been ramped up and it's been very good. But there's a balance. There's pros and cons for it. Personally, myself, the pros for it is the working from home has been completely life-changing for me. I could just say that, because in my job now and my previous job, I'd probably be traveling about 70 to 80% of the time. To go from traveling 70 to 80% of the time to the breaks on, and you don't know yourself, hence the crazy purchases.
Yeah. Things happen. Yeah, I mean, equally. I mean, I coming up next week, I think it's 2 years since I was on a plane. First time in my entire career that's been the case. Like, it's gone from, as you say, 50, 60 flights a year, you know, for business to zero. So that's been an interesting change. Talk to me a little bit about the content, though, that you have to create to help nurture, build these sort of connections. Because I think that's part of what we're sort of talking about today is, you know, do I really want to read another PDF or wherever about whatever the topic is? Like how do you focus on creating, you know, good, engaging content that helps bring people back and develops that nurture?
That's it. Like, so our primary focus would have been always the white papers, the case studies, the PDFs, as you said, kind of breaking down what we can provide, what we offer, how you could solve a particular problem. And to an extent it still is, but what I kind of tried to integrate is it's not the end point that you're focusing on, it's the start of that journey, and you have to kind of bring them in. So we started experimenting and doing video pieces. Our primary channel would have been through LinkedIn, and doing video pieces kind of addressing things that would be of concern to our potential clients,
right?
And then trying to lead them through and offering them papers on that or blog pieces on that. And once they signed up and submitted to us, and we could send them further material. As well as that, once they went onto the site, then we could retarget them with other pieces that would be of interest. So like my primary thing, KPI, was front of mind awareness. As I said before, like, it's just keep clarity in their head until they're about to do their budget or they need a service when their boss tells them we need to get.
And I think that's also the effectiveness of that is probably symptomatic of not just where it's much easier to produce video today. Face to camera, you can shoot 30 seconds without hardly thinking about it in decent quality. But also the fact that, we're consuming a lot of this content on mobile. Therefore, if I'm instead of reading, 6 paragraphs, I'll actually watch and hear, 30, 90, 2 minutes of video much, much easier. So, because we've seen that even with product pages within e-com stores now, that increasingly we're trying to integrate, just some short video stuff to help that learning experience.
So much more effective. Like, as you said, like people reading things, I don't think you take it in as much as someone giving you a soundbite. People, it sticks with people, and you'll hear people almost mimicking what you say. I've seen it through like videos that we've produced, and then people coming back with that soundbite when we were in meetings with them, which is brilliant. Like it's really effective.
But it also feeds into that connection thing that we've been talking about as well, because text on a page, it's hard to, unless you're a really good writer, it's difficult to get the personality and the, that other elements to it, which is much easier, I think. Well, for some people, not everybody, but it is easier for some people to communicate.
Especially in the medium we're working in, like, so with pharma companies and financial companies, the text can be very long-winded and drawn out, and quite frankly, sometimes boring. Like, so it's what we try to do is simplify that and kind of, as you've said, like come out with what it means to that person. What does it mean for me? What will I get from this? What's my takeaway? Because like that saying, people by people, like it's something that we've removed from things. But to go back to the video piece, I think it's the doorway has been opened through that as well. Like I was in one of the sports stores in Dublin there a couple of weeks ago, and I was just the usual kind of taking in everything when you're up. There's loads of people going around. I was buying shoes for my daughter, and I seen this person just going and taking a photograph of a pair of trainers, and then they were there when they were sitting, and then they were looking at a review of those trainers in the store from some influencer somewhere else, and making their purchase decision based on the video. And they went on to buy the trainers, but like it's powerful. And if I think bridging that gap from retail to digital is something that we haven't done properly yet, and I think there's so much potential in that as well.
And I think it feeds into, like, if we can, wear the green jersey for a second. I think as Irish people, we naturally, I think we're generally communicative, and we like that networking sort of space. So it feeds into our national psyche, I think, in a good way. It'll help us, develop. It gives us an opportunity to go push that advantage, and compete.
Definitely,
beyond punch above our weight, as we would say.
We're the only country that greet each other by saying, "What's the story?" Like, how can you get more creative than that?
Isn't that the truth? And that's how stories is how we connect, isn't it? And how we establish that belonging. Yeah, that's a really good point, Shane, to finish on. Yeah,
John, just to before we wrap up on it, just your impression of what we've heard from everyone today, and maybe it might be a cue for other people to jump in if there's something else that they want to add onto it.
Yeah, I mean, Brendan, I think that as we went through the discussion, I mean, I think Aisling really hit a really interesting point early. Is we have an innate desire to belong. We talk in marketing terms of finding your tribe and being part of, your tribe. So I think the Moshoppa idea of being able to enable, commerce in that environment and provide that connection, I think, is a really, really interesting one. And it's one I've taken a note of, Aisling. There's a couple of opportunities I think that we might explore in the later stages. And then I think we've talked a lot about remote working and how technology enables that, between what, the experiences that David and Shane have shared with us today too. I mean, it is a tremendous opportunity. It also brings some challenges. And for me, I've had the benefit of being able to work remotely for almost 20 years, like 1 or 2 days a week. So it wasn't new, but doing it 5 days a week without that other connection was certainly a bigger challenge than I expected, to be honest, over the last 18 months or so. So we have to find ways of using new technologies like video, like chat, like all of those sort of things that we have to try and bring, really work hard at making those human connections forever. And then, as Paul was talking about in terms of, how we optimize those experiences and make sure that we're bringing in new people, that we're taking a long-term view about this. You know, things don't happen overnight. You have to invest in the right things, the right actions, and do it over a long term. You know, small actions, the right small actions over time is what really delivers results, I feel, in most of these environments. So again, that was really, you know, reaffirmed by what Paul was telling us. So yeah, I think, you know, we have seen growth, we have seen scaling, we have seen people change the methods and technologies and elements that they use. But as long as you stay focused on the really big picture in terms of making those connections, keeping those customers close to you, then I think you're on the right road for success. Great.
And listen, a great note to finish it on, John. I'm very thankful to you, as always, John Leach of WSI, but a wonderful panel of guests again today. Aisling Quinn from Moshoppa, David Gordon, head of eCommerce at Cloudtech, Paul Carey, SEO consultant at Launch Site Boost, and Shane Stafford, senior marketing leader at Clarity Engagement Solutions. Thank you all very much, and continued success to you all in your e-commerce journeys.